Chapter 50. Misfortunes never come singly. A dark streak had hit Dalny. Troubles were happening every day, like clockwork. Gordy's betrayal, Katya's injury, the mutants' invasion, and now Lena's sudden attack. The girl woke her brother in the early morning. Fortunately, neither of them were on duty that day. Max stared at his sister in fear. Lena's cheek was swollen, her temperature had risen, and she was crying and moaning incessantly.
I'll run for Valentine.
In the confusion, Owl even forgot his pistol and ran out of the house without a weapon. The dentist was on duty at the duty room at the entrance to the village. He had just started his shift, yawning frequently and shivering uncomfortably from the chill. He hadn't slept well that night and was plagued by nightmares. As dawn broke, the dentist leaned against the windowsill, scowling as he surveyed the surroundings. "Valentine, are you here?"
"Here. What happened?"
The duty officer leaned out the window in surprise and noticed the teenager.
"Lenka has a toothache. Her cheek is bruised. She's all hot." Okay, wait, I need to warn Boris. I just relieved him."
The dentist radioed RoboCop and reported the situation. The border guard stomped in 5 minutes later and resumed his shift. Soon Valentine was examining Lena with a puzzled expression. Max nervously cracked his fingers, watching his little sister gasp and flinch with every head movement.
"Honestly, the tooth can still be saved. We need equipment. I could pull it out right here with pliers, of course, but the tooth in the smile zone, the first premolar, would look unsightly." No, don't pull," the girl began to wail. "Let's go to the bunker then. I'll wake up Fyodor now. We need to take Petka with us. They'll definitely let us in with him."
"You never know." The doctor looked at the teenagers in surprise. "What bunker?" "I'll explain on the way." Max ran out into the street and rushed like a bullet to the Cossack's house. Early in the morning, the entire village was once again in an uproar. An emergency meeting was called to decide who would go to the shelter.
"I won't let Petya go alone. I'll answer to Nikolaevich for him," Fyodor declared.
"We'll go in 2 cars, just in case, with a driver and a gunner in each. Better safe than sorry. Better safe than sorry." "Who will remain in the village then?" Oksana asked worriedly. Valentine thoughtfully scratched his black beard. "I don't think it's worth it to drive 2 cars either. Now, if we were going into town, that would be a different matter. But from what I understand, it's a remote place." No one had yet explained anything to the dentist about the government bunker. The doctor only understood that the place was secret and located somewhere in the mountains. "It's still safer here than on the road. No one's allowed to wander the streets until we get back. 2 guards at the posts are enough. So, let's go like this. Petya, Maxim, and I in 1 car. Valentine and Lena in the other. You need 1 more person in the crew. I can be either a driver or a gunner. It makes no difference to me," Gorik volunteered. "Okay, then Borka and Leka will guard the village." 10 minutes later, 2 cars pulled out of Dalny. Lena took a painkiller and curled up in the back seat. A Cossack drove the lead vehicle. They moved carefully. The road didn't allow for speed. The highway was rapidly deteriorating. "We need horses, and lots of them. Horse-drawn transport is everything to us. In a year, it won't be possible to drive a car here at all." Gorik sighed, steering around a suspicious pile of branches. "Yes, or grow wings," the dentist agreed. "And have you been where we're going?" "Yep, there's an observatory in the mountains, and underneath it, as it turns out, is a government shelter. That's where our president hid when the big fox engulfed the planet." "Why didn't you stay in Moscow?" Who knows? But things didn't work out for him there, and Nikolaich was kicked out. So he came to us, to Dalny. And then things improved, and now we've become sort of allies with this bunker. Well, what a story! Valentin tapped his fingers on the butt of his Kalashnikov. Sweat broke out on the doctor's forehead, and he fidgeted nervously in his chair. Is everything normal? The dentist coughed into his fist and nodded affirmatively. Yes, everything's fine. Although, no. Pull over to the side of the road. I've got a stomachache. The veterinarian honked the horn at his friends and stopped the car. Let me cover you. Valentin didn't answer, quickly got out and went deeper into the forest. What happened? Fyodor shouted. The man had an urgent need, explained Gore. Lena looked longingly at the trees behind which the doctor had disappeared. The journey was still a long one, and once the anesthetic wore off, every minute of delay would seem like terrible torment. Max slammed the door and walked up to his sister. Are you patient? So far, so good. Lena sat pale, her eyes swollen and tear-stained. Her entire appearance evoked only pity and sympathy. We'll get there soon, and everything will be fine. Her brother squeezed her hand and kissed her forehead, something he had never done before. The girl smiled and whispered, Thank you. Max, check them out, they're missing, Fyodor commanded. The Cossack kept the engine running, glancing around tensely from the driver's seat. The teenager followed the dentist and veterinarian. Owl walked slowly, glancing at his feet and the treetops. As if ordinary zombies weren't enough, now there were mutants. At least the flying elands haven't shown up yet, although if things keep going like this, that crap might be possible too. The teenager's train of thought was interrupted by the rustling of leaves. Gorik's figure appeared ahead, and Valentin hobbled behind him. Is everything okay? Max asked automatically. I think so, the veterinarian shrugged. The doctor remained silent, though his expression made it clear that he was not okay. Sova even began to worry about how the dentist would treat Lenka in such a state. I'll take a leak here. I'll catch up soon, the teenager warned, unbuttoning his pants. Lena pressed her healthy cheek against the window. The glass pleasantly cooled her face. Finally, they're coming back. Where's my brother? Why are they without him? Gorik said something quietly to Fyodor and got behind the wheel. Valentin shifted his weight, then glanced back at the forest, then turned his gaze to Lena. He stared at her without looking away, absent-mindedly scratching his beard. The girl thought the dentist looked strange. Maybe he's worried too? Or afraid of something? Lena tried to push away the negative thoughts. Get in! What's wrong? The veterinarian shouted, and the doctor snapped out of his stupor. But instead of opening the passenger door, he quickly walked around the car, pointed the barrel of his rifle at the driver's window, and fired a short burst. Gorik's head shattered into pieces in a second. Lena, forgetting the pain, screamed so loudly that her ears nearly bled. She was already covered in blood, Gorik's blood, whose body slid lifelessly across the seat. Valentin opened fire on the second car, then threw the veterinarian's body onto the ground, got behind the wheel, and took off. It all happened so quickly and unexpectedly that no one had time to stop him. Max burst out of the forest just as the SUV carrying Lena and the kidnapper disappeared around the bend. The passenger door of the second car opened slightly, and Peter's voice came out. Maxim! Over here! Owl was speechless with shock. The teenager couldn't even utter a simple, "What happened?" He simply stood there, shaking his head in disbelief, his mouth slightly open. Max feared mutants, zombies, bandits, anything but this. Here! Come here! Petka continued shouting. A moment of hesitation suddenly gave way to feverish hysteria. What? How?
Who shot? Where is Lena? The dentist managed to puncture the second car quite a bit, but in his panic, he fired wildly, which saved the lives of Fyodor and Pyotr. Valentin, fearing Max's return, didn't fire any finishing shots and immediately fled. Pyotr miraculously escaped injury, but Fyodor was less fortunate. The bullet passed right through his left side between his ribs. "What the hell is this? How can this happen?" the Cossack muttered in despair, trying to start the car. He got out of the car with a groan, opened the hood, and realized that he would no longer be able to catch the bastard. Hanna. The only way to roll her is by towing. Petka stared at Gorek's corpse and immediately doubled over. The president's son was turned inside out. Max tried to compose himself, but the fear of losing his sister clouded his thoughts. The car was broken. Fyodor was injured. Gor was dead. The village was several hours' walk away, and Lena had been kidnapped by a man they'd trusted completely just 5 minutes ago. "We need to go back." "Let's take another car," Petka suggested. "Are you an idiot? He'll get to Abkhazia in that time. We need to run after him now." Sova lost his temper and yelled at his friend, as if it was all his fault. Fyodor felt his legs tremble and sat down on the side of the road. His clothes were soaked with blood. He pressed his palm to his ribs and winced. He won't get that far. He doesn't have enough power reserve. But Maxim's right. We need to catch him now.
Look here, guys. I've had my fill of running. Now you'll have to do it yourselves.
Uncle Fedya, no, don't die.
Petya sobbed like a child. Let me examine the wound. Max quickly tore open his jacket, found the entry and exit points of the bullet, and began to apply a bandage. Fyodor coughed and nearly choked on the pain. Precious minutes were melting away before his eyes, but Sova understood that he couldn't just leave the man to die like that. Lie still until the wound heals a bit, then go back home. Petka, you stay with him and help him get there. I'll go look for Lenka alone, and you send out a patrol if you can. The Cossack stretched out on the back seat, his legs dangling over the side. The president's son pulled Max aside. What if he doesn't arrive? What should I do? How should I know? Then run to Dalny yourself. Exactly. That's better. We'll be crawling around with him all day. Better to hide him here in the car. The zombies probably won't get to him. I don't know Khan, but a mutant can easily. They'll be more likely to smell us on the road. And I can't run away with him, nor can I fight him off. We definitely won't make it before dark. He probably won't even make it a kilometer. And this way, I'll run to the village and quickly return with help. Sova silently acknowledged the idea was sound. It would be best for the wounded man not to move unnecessarily. Leaving Fyodor in the car would be safer for both of them. Okay, it's a deal. Maybe we can set a meeting place somewhere? Max thought for a moment. Come on, by the abandoned mobile home. If you drive by, stop. 2 minutes later, the teenagers separated. Fyodor didn't want to let the president's son go alone and started to argue, but quickly realized it was futile. He was too weak, and every second of delay threatened Lena with death, or God knows what else. The Cossack locked himself in the car and waited to see who would come first, help or death. Chapter 51. The Monster's Tale. The thief sped, oblivious to potholes and bumps, the car bouncing, plunging into potholes, and knocking over piles of debris. The dentist didn't spare the suspension just to get away with his loot. When Lena recovered from the initial shock, she grabbed the doctor by the hair. When they sent her to the bunker, no one even thought to give her a gun or even a knife. The girl resorted to her nails and teeth, but it wasn't enough. Valentine swung his fist at her, hitting her sore cheek, then slowed down and knocked her out cold with a single blow. She came to about 10 minutes later, when something crashed into the undercarriage of the car. No, she hadn't dreamed it. It all really happened. The captive lay on her side, her knees bent, her hands and feet bound. Now it wasn't just the hated tooth that ached, but her entire jaw. Why did you do this?" Lena moaned through tears. The kidnapper didn't turn around. He gripped the steering wheel so tightly that the veins in his wrists bulged. The car took a high-speed turn, and the girl was already convinced they were about to fly off the road and flip over. She desperately wanted that. Then there would be at least some chance of survival. But the dentist regained control and pressed the pedal even harder. Lena understood that asking, pleading, or evoking pity was useless. This wasn't a mistake. He'd thought it all through. Before shooting Gore, the doctor had stared at her with such a strange, insane look. And then this nightmare began. But why would he need me? As a hostage? The girl didn't want to think about it, but the terrible thoughts had already crept into her consciousness without asking, instilling terror. She struggled to sit up and looked out the rear window. No one was pursuing them. No one was trying to catch up. The kidnapper had shot up the second car, meaning Fyodor and Petka were also dead or seriously wounded. Only her brother remained, her only hope of salvation. Lena couldn't resist, couldn't escape. She could only lie there and pray. The girl knew that Max would come to the rescue. He will definitely find me and snatch me from the clutches of this bastard. But with every kilometer, faith in this grew weaker. The dentist noticed the captive stirring and barked angrily. "Lie down! Do you want to get beat up again?" Valentine's expression changed. Even his voice had changed. Instead of the cheerful, chatty wit, he now looked like a nervous, nasty, and cruel individual. The dentist was trembling and licking his lips frequently. Lena sensed that he was afraid too. After a while, the car turned off the main road and began bouncing over the potholes of the broken dirt road. Then the forest began, and the road became a narrow track between the trees. They drove for at least an hour until they got stuck in a deep puddle. The wheels churned through the mud stubbornly but uselessly. The doctor grew angry, pounding his fist on the steering wheel, but the car didn't budge. Lena was afraid to rejoice prematurely, but she felt that luck was finally starting to turn in her favor. Not quite yet, but at least it was starting to turn around. The girl didn't know where she was, but she was sure she could find Dalny if she managed to escape. And now, everything could be decided. Valentine climbed out of the car and sank into the murky mud. Lena lay on her back, her knees pulled up to her chest. She remembered Ivan's advice. Even a child can knock out a grown man if he hits him right in the jaw. All that was left was to hit him. The doctor swung open the passenger door, and just as he reached inside, the captive's legs straightened like a taut spring. Lena aimed her heels at his chin, but missed by a hair. The dentist managed to dodge slightly, and the blow landed on his forehead. He recoiled and fell into the puddle. Come on, kick, goat. Kick your legs before I rip them out," the kidnapper laughed. He rose, dirty to the waist, with a stained beard and a cut above his eye. The girl realized she'd missed her chance. She squealed and tried to hit him again, but immediately felt a sharp, dull pain in her head and passed out. Valentine knocked out his victim and looked around. No one was there. Only the bare, leafless trees watched his crime with indifference. There's no need to worry about being chased for now. I have 1 day to spare. Or rather, a night. Well, I won't be sleeping today." The dentist slung his backpack over his shoulders. No one in the village noticed how he discreetly placed it in the trunk. It contained everything he needed. Leaving Dalny, the doctor had no intention of returning. The kidnapper mentally calculated how far he had to go to reach his destination. It was quite a distance, trudging along with a heavy load. He could end it all here and now, but he wanted to do it differently, as he had imagined it. Valentine had planned this from the first days of his stay in Dalny and had already identified his victims. He preferred Xusha, but Lena also proved a valuable trophy. The dentist pulled out a homemade rosary from his pocket, which he hadn't shown to anyone. The small, irregularly shaped white beads gently clicked against each other. His most prized possession, his talisman. Valentine dragged the girl's body out of the car, hoisted it over his shoulder, and walked away. He lasted about 7 minutes. Then the doctor lowered his burden to the ground, sat down next to her, and leaned against a tree. He was breathing heavily. His back ached with fatigue, and his left knee began to ache. He had to change his plan. The kidnapper patted Lena's cheeks, brought her back to her senses, and ordered her to walk ahead. The girl refused and was immediately punished harshly. Finally, she broke and submitted to the kidnapper. The dentist knew all too well how pain could be used to control people.
Lena was barely breathing. Her nose was swollen from the beatings, and her mouth was taped shut.
Valentine untied her legs, but tied her arms so tightly behind her back that she could barely feel her fingers. The girl walked with her head bowed, crying silently. She was in so much pain and suffering that she wanted to die right then and there. She no longer believed she would be saved. Her hope of surviving until morning faded like a candle doused with water. They walked for 4 hours, stopping only briefly. The road gradually turned into a narrow path. Then it, too, disappeared, but the doctor continued on his previous course. "Go there, to the right." Lena heard a hoarse, tired voice behind her. Soon the captive made out the outline of a small house. A low, dilapidated dwelling, almost a dugout, nestled at the base of a small hill. The roof was overgrown with moss and stunted grass. The door was crooked, and the log walls were slowly but surely turning to dust. A Hilton hotel, 5 stars. All we're missing is a doorman, the tormentor joked, still laced with irony. Reaching the hideout, he noticeably brightened. Even with her small stature, Lena had to bend almost double to fit through the low doorway. The doctor, groaning, squeezed through after her. The entire house consisted of one room. Along the left side stretched a wide bunk bed, topped by 2 old, moldy mattresses. The far corner was occupied by a soot-blackened barrel, which had been converted into a stove. The dirty wooden floor was rotten in places and smelled damp. "So, how's it going? Do you like it? This is where I lived until I stumbled upon your village." The dentist tore the tape from the girl's lips, and the captive was finally able to breathe through her mouth. "Why did we come here?" Lena asked, but was afraid to get the answer. The doctor chuckled under his breath and dropped his backpack onto the bunk. He wiped his sweaty forehead, closed his eyes, and smiled slightly.
"I can't feel my hands."
The girl clenched her teeth and began to cry. "Remember how it was in that old cartoon? Arms, legs, the main thing is the tail." Valentine's jokes had never thrilled her before, and now she simply wanted to rip his tongue out. But how? She had almost no strength left. Her whole body ached from the beatings, and fear paralyzed her already weak muscles. The kidnapper pushed the captive onto the mattress to tie her legs. Then he took pity and cut the rope around her wrists. Lena looked at her blue, numb fingers and moved them with difficulty. It's certainly not as cozy here as your neat little houses, but I've gotten used to it. It's a charming little place. The doctor stabbed his knife into the log wall. I've been observing your community for a long time, getting a good look at how many people there are and what the customs are like. Back then, by the river, you almost missed me. By the river? Uh-huh. You all gathered there with the young people and played with the dog. Lena remembered that morning. She, Max, Susha, and Petya were walking agate. When the bushes on the far bank rustled, everyone tensed. Petya suggested shooting, but her brother didn't want to make a fuss. Why didn't he shoot then? They eventually decided it was an animal or a bird and soon forgot about it. No one paid any attention to it. And this is what it all led to. Are you going to kill me? The girl asked unexpectedly boldly. The kidnapper yawned as if he were doing the most boring and routine thing in the world. We're all already dead. We just don't want to admit it to ourselves. Do you believe in signs? I do. There are so many signs out there, you just have to know how to read them. That day Gordy left me to be torn apart by zombies, I decided everything for myself. I realized that if I was going to survive, I had to change everything. He saved my life, and I swore to give him another. Him? Who? The dentist just smiled slyly and pressed his finger to his trembling lips. Signs. Signs. He pulled out the homemade rosary beads, examining each bead carefully, almost lovingly. The doctor remembered them all and could name them. 12 beads, 12 filed teeth, 12 girls, 12 years of hunting. The police nicknamed the elusive serial killer Zubeder. He killed once a year. The victims were not connected to each other. The dentist did not rape the hostages and left no trace. Therefore, he was never found. Before arriving in Dalny, Valentin carefully crafted his cover story. He concocted a story about a wife and 2 daughters to appear like a classic family man, even though he'd never married. He played the role well. When he wanted to, the doctor was a cheerful soul and the life of the party, easily connecting with people, adapting to their needs, and never clashing with anyone. The dentist took Lena by the chin, looking closely at her face. You look a little like her now. Goosebumps ran across the girl's skin, and immediately her aching tooth began to ache again. On whom? Valentin frowned. These memories always irritated him. My sister. The captive's pulse quickened with excitement. She decided that she would be able to find a way to approach the maniac. I need to get him talking. Try to get closer so he starts trusting me. Find out his secrets, his past. Then, maybe, his guard will drop, and then... Tell me about her, Lena asked meekly. The dentist remembered the face and voice of his sister, Aliona, as if he'd seen her yesterday. Yet many years had passed since their last meeting. He also remembered that fateful day. The doorbell rang, he opened it, and there stood 2 of his sister's friends, Sveta and Karina. His sister was late somewhere. Her phone wasn't answering. The girls asked him to wait in the apartment, and he didn't refuse. They brought beer and offered it to him. The boy agreed, not wanting to seem small. They were 14. He was 12. The teenagers decided to while away the time by playing cards. They were playing for wishes. Inexperienced Valya quickly got drunk, but kept pouring more. He lost once, twice, 3 times. At first, the wishes were harmless, but as the alcohol level rose, The game conditions became increasingly daring. Sveta and Karina became tipsy, and the boy completely lost control of himself. When Valya lost his next wish, the girls demanded he strip naked and run through the entryway to the 5th floor and back. Their apartment was on the 2nd. The boy drank some more beer for courage. He was completely blown away. He undressed, opened the door, went out onto the landing, and ran. But not up, but down. Valya didn't remember how he got outside, how he started running around the courtyard and yelling nonsense. His sister's friends dragged him into the apartment, but 5 minutes was all it took for him to instantly become a social media star. His naked eccentricity became known to the entire class, the school, and, it seemed, the entire world. Valya, who hadn't been the bravest or strongest boy growing up, suddenly began to be bullied by everyone. Childhood traumas are the deepest, and this one was destined never to heal. It grew and ate away at his soul. Valya blamed Sveta and Karina for everything. He hated them, believing they had ruined his life. He dreamed of revenge, but he was afraid. And so, many years later, he began to take revenge on others. On others as young as they had been that day. He extracted a tooth from each victim, then carefully filed it down to a rounded shape. He strung them on a string and hid them in his hiding place. The police couldn't get to him for a long time, but during the last murder, the dentist made a small mistake and almost got caught. He had to move to another city, lay low for a while, and then no one cared about him anymore. The zombie apocalypse erased the past. Even when the world collapsed, the maniac continued to amass his collection. But teenage girls were becoming increasingly difficult to find, and he disdained the infected. And then, in the Far East, Valentine encountered 2 of them, one of whom was now in his hands. He'd been waiting for this for so long, had plotted the abduction so often, that now he couldn't even believe it had all been so simple. He needed to calm down. The maniac fiddled with the rosary beads from the girl's teeth. The moment had come. Lena was destined to become the 13th link in his chain of murders. "Scary, huh?" the doctor asked, almost good-naturedly, as if it were all a joke, just a cruel prank. And any minute now, a lively, cheerful Gorik would run into the dugout, along with Max and everyone else. But the pain was real. Her body couldn't lie. The girl felt like her nose and ribs were broken. "It's scary," the captive confirmed. The dentist made a sympathetic face and pointed his machine gun at the wall. "And does your tooth hurt a lot?" "Yes," Lena swallowed, feeling her bound legs go numb. Valentine unzipped his backpack and pulled out his small medical suitcase. "Don't be afraid. It will stop now." A floorboard creaked with alarm. The wind began to howl alarmingly under the roof. The entire house seemed to shrink in fear, along with the pale captive. Chapter 52. On Thin Ice. Pooh opened the door of the cell and began to babble incoherently. "You, come with me. You're a doctor, right? Can you do it? This thing needs bandaging. Get up, we need to do this quickly." Masha didn't understand anything except that something bad had happened. She rose from the bed, and Tanya immediately grabbed her arm. "I'm with you." "No, you sit here," Pooh intervened and gestured for Vorobyov to leave. When Masha saw the pale, motionless professor in the cell, she assumed he was dead. The floor was covered in blood, and the corpses of hybrids and Vlasov's mangled body lay strewn against the wall. "Bandage his head, Maybe he'll pull through, Keratin ordered, assessing the captive's figure with interest. I don't have anything. I need to go to the medical unit, the girl muttered in confusion. Well then run quickly. I thought you took everything at once, snorted Natanich, and turned his gaze to Pooh. Take her away. 5 minutes later, the wounded Albert Borisovich was carried into the ward. Masha did everything she could, but she knew it wasn't enough. If the professor had a brain hemorrhage, no one could help him. Kurochkin was tied up and locked up. Keratin realized he'd been too hasty in eliminating the hybrids. He could have done it later. As it was, he'd only provoked the virologists to revolt, and it looked like one of them would have to be written off. Kaimovich looked too bad. After capturing the bunker, the leader's worries increased. He had to decide what to do next, return to the village or settle here. Natanich's greatest concern was that he had too few men under his command. The prisoners outnumbered them, and if Dina were left out, the situation would become even more tense. It would be difficult to keep track of everyone. He would have to get rid of someone. Ultimately, Keratin trusted only Pooh. Diamond feared him and obeyed him, but felt no loyalty. Dina hated him downright. Natanich understood that he could lose power as quickly as the poor major. One day you're the most important, the next you're dead. Every action of the leader was like stepping onto a lake where the ice had just begun to freeze. One wrong move, and trouble would overwhelm you. When Masha finished bandaging Albert Borisovich, she was locked in the room with Tanya again. Vorobyova didn't know how to answer the girl's questions, and finally decided to tell the truth. The little girl was completely despondent, remembering all the hardships she and her mentor had endured, and refusing to believe he would die like this. Meanwhile, Ivan was loaded with dirty work. He didn't even know what was worse, serving as bait for hybrids in the freezing cold, or scrubbing blood, guts, and brains off the floor. The cosmonaut briefly met Masha, but they weren't allowed to exchange a few words. Vorobyov's plan to change the leadership in the bunker had failed, or rather, the leadership had changed, but things had only gotten worse for them. Khariton could have executed him at any moment, so as not to feed another mouth, and that moment was just around the corner. The mop scraped across the floor, collecting the remains of blood. Ivan frantically considered his options for salvation, but soon realized it was all futile. He had to wait for the invaders to make a mistake, but would he have enough time to wait for that? Meanwhile, Pooh became increasingly worried and reminded Khariton about his wife and the pharmacist. We all need to go together, either there or here. What if someone attacks the house? People, or these creatures. Hybrids, damn them. Our women don't even know about them. And what do you think, there or here? How do you decide? You're the foreman. Natanich fell silent, clenched his fingers into a fist, and lightly hit the wall. Okay, take the snowmobile, the sled, and some extra fuel. Go get the women. You'll be back just in time for the evening. We'll settle down here for now, and then we'll see. Okay, I'll be quick. You understand, if something happens to Ulya, I'll never forgive myself. Pavel Dmitrievich was terribly worried about his wife. And you won't forgive me either, the leader added to himself. Soon, Pooh left the hangar and headed for the village. It was wonderful to breathe in the fresh air. For a moment, he even considered not returning to that dark, gloomy bunker. Let Keratin manage there as he pleases. I don't like this concrete cage. But he could only be rude to the foreman in his thoughts. In reality, he would never dare challenge him. Pooh knew he'd have to go back and endure it. The day dragged on, but Natanich had enough time to calmly mull everything over. He went to Vlasov's office, but thinking on an empty stomach was difficult. Keratin trudged to the kitchen area, examined it, scratched his head, and went to Masha's cell. When the door opened again, the captive assumed the worst had befallen the professor. Masha was surprised that the leader himself had come for her. "Come out, there's work for you." Tanya sadly let go of her nanny and hugged the battered gray hair to her chest. Being alone had become completely unbearable. Natanich walked behind Masha and stared lustfully at her hips and slender legs. "What were you doing here? Were you bullied?" The captive detected an unusual note in his intonation. Keratin spoke to her like an old friend who hadn't seen his close friend in a long time. "No, I was looking after Tanya. The baby was very sick." "She's not your daughter, is she? Whose is she?" "The adopted daughter of Albert Borisovich, who destroyed humanity with his virus," Vorobyova wanted to reply. The girl half turned as she walked. "An orphan. She has no one." Words couldn't soften the foreman's heart. He was simply trying to somehow connect with Masha, get closer to her, and win her over. Yes, it was no wonder the cosmonaut wanted to return to this woman so much. She's a hot chick. Even under these circumstances, Masha remained a beauty. Keratin liked her more and more, but Ivan remained a hindrance. Killing him can't be that easy. He'll hate me forever. I need to somehow get rid of this idiot and then console her. But why wait? There's another way to handle this. Natanich came up with a plan. "You'll now be in charge of the economic affairs of our small state. Report to me about the food supplies. But first, prepare dinner. The prisoners need to be fed too. Everyone will have the same rations. I'll keep everything fair and square." "Aren't you going to let us go? We're not with them. We were held captive here." "Yes, Vanka told me. Maybe I'll let you go. I haven't decided yet. It will all depend on you," Khariton lied. Evening came, but Pooh still hadn't returned. This seriously unnerved Natanich. He hadn't known a snowstorm had started in the village, so Pavel Dmitrievich decided to wait it out indoors. He didn't risk driving through the storm with 2 women at night, even knowing he'd get a beating from the foreman. Khariton woke up the red-haired man before the night shift. "Look here, Dimka. You're a brave and honest boy. I'm pleased with you." The leader praised the boy in a fatherly tone. Redhead was even taken aback by this approach. He had already forgotten the last time he had been praised. "Come on, what? I'm like everyone else." "Like everyone else? But not like everyone else. I value people like you. You'll go far. I'm thinking of rewarding you for taking the bunker. Tell me honestly, do you like Dinka?" Dima swallowed, afraid to say too much. "In terms of—" "A dick in the yoke. How do you like the woman, I say?" "Well, she's yours." Natanich grinned cheerfully and laughed hoarsely. He looked like a big, good-natured Great Dane now, but deep in his eyes, a sly, calculating glimmer gleamed. "I've, let's say, broken Dinka in like a wild mare, so she wouldn't break your back. She's meek and docile now, but she's a real firecracker in bed. The perfect wife. Take her. Although, if you don't like her, we'll find her another partner." "Why don't you like it?" "I like it. It's cool." Dima fussed. "Well, she likes you too. I saw how she was staring at you." "Oh, really?" "I wasn't born yesterday. I can smell that kind of thing in women right away. Anyway, you've got a shift coming up soon. Go to her room, relax before work. Just lock her in again. I'm afraid she might switch sides. You can't give her that chance, understand? Women are a cunning bunch. You're responsible for her. Got it. Wait, where's Pooh? Hasn't he come back yet? Maybe something happened. The foreman skillfully concealed his excitement. Not yet, but he's a smart guy. He won't disappear. Expect him tonight. If he doesn't show up, we'll decide in the morning. Okay, I get it. So I'm going? That same... Come on, blow before I change my mind. Dima walked, or rather, almost ran. He wasn't embarrassed to take a girl after Hariton. These weren't the times to be showing off. Especially since he'd been pining for Dinka since the very first day he caught her in the forest. Chapter 53. Well, that's it. Hariton entered Kaimovitch's room and confirmed that the professor was still breathing. The leader seriously doubted the virologist would survive until morning. Large dark circles had formed around Albert Borisovich's eyes. His cheeks were sunken, and his hoarse, ragged breathing was barely audible. But Natanich was in too romantic a mood to mourn the premature death of a prisoner, even such a valuable one. After locking the wounded man in, Hariton went to see Masha. The door opened, and the leader's rough, weathered face, as if carved from a log, stared at the captives. "Little one, you'll come with me." Tanya and Masha both flinched. Vorobyova shielded the little girl with her body. "Where are you taking her? Why?" "Don't worry, I won't eat you. I'm already full, thank you. Come on, get up. No one will touch you." Tanya's knees began to shake. Even a half-rotten zombie would have scared her less than this guy with the icy, piercing eyes. "Are you sure you won't offend her?" Masha's stern face amused Hariton. "I swear on my mother, not a hair will fall from her shoulder. That's a gentleman's word." But Vorobyova swallowed the taunt. What else could she do? She stroked the girl's head and nodded. "Go. Everything will be fine." Natanich took the little captive into an empty room and locked her there. "You'll spend the night here tonight. Sit quietly if you want to see Masha tomorrow." Now, no one disturbed him. The evening was no longer languid. Hariton leisurely returned to Masha's room, placed a bar of chocolate on the table, and set down a bottle of wine. "Here, I found this in the warehouse. It's written in French." The girl sat down in the corner of the bed, leaned against the wall, and hugged her knees with her hands. "Why? I won't. It's been a tough day. I need to relax. Relieve the stress, so to speak." The foreman began to make advances. He had no desire to force himself. He was interested in achieving reciprocity. Natanich understood that reciprocity wouldn't happen quickly. But he was in no hurry, keeping a few aces up his sleeve. "No need. I'm married." Vorobyova knew how stupid that phrase sounded, but nothing else came to mind, and silence could be taken as consent. "You should think about your husband, and about this little brat. You do understand that at any moment I can send you all to the wolves to be fed, or give you to that doctor, Robert Frankensteinovich, so that he can breed new mutants from you. He was very upset that I shot the old ones. He even cried. I can console him. I'll tell him I'll give him new material for experiments. Will you sleep with your husband if he becomes a zombie hybrid? No? Well, you see, checkmate." Hariton had cornered the girl. The lives of Vanya, Tanya, and the rest of their friends now depended on her compliance. But for how long? Or, having had enough of his new mistress, would he kill them all anyway? Such joyless thoughts raged through Masha's head.
She wanted to just close her eyes and disappear. To never see, never feel, never be afraid again. How wonderful it was in Dalny.
Oh, if only it weren't for that message from Albert Borisovich. Is this really the end? Natanish licked his lips, uncorked the wine, and looked around. And I forgot about the glasses. Okay, we'll drink from the bottle, like pioneers. And then we'll play Spin the Bottle. You probably played that when you were little too? While Hariton was playing cat and mouse with the captive, Dimon broke into Dina's cell. Hi, are you bored? I came to chat with you. The girl was surprised to see a redhead and not Natanich. She was sure it was the foreman who had shown up, yearning for a woman's affection. What's going on there? Who else was killed? Dima grinned, remembering the Major's suffering. Remember their main one, the big-faced one? Well, they fed him to the mutants. He's like zombies, only worse. Then they smashed one of the botanists' heads in. He's lying there dying now. Pooh went after the women. He should have been back by now, but he's not here yet. And I came to you. We're together now, in short. What? Dina let out a sudden, nervous laugh. Well, you're mine now. You never liked the foreman, but you'll be fine with me. Why did you decide that I want to be with you? It was as if you were really enjoying yourself with Hariton. He had you wherever he wanted, without asking. Rigi approached and tried to kiss her. Dina pushed the groom away and jumped back to the door. She sensed an opportunity. Everything depended on whose side this unexpected hero lover would take. Listen, let's get out of here. These guys have a helicopter, they have a pilot. We just need to free them, they'll take us south with them. I talked to Ivan, he promised. My grandfather was also promised communism, but he was screwed. I don't trust that guy. And Hariton? You were the one who suggested we run away, weren't you? Back by the stream in Badger's hut, remember? Only now we won't have to wander around the taiga. We'll fly to the sea, where it's warm. And if you don't want to talk to them, that's okay. The main thing is to get out of here. And from there, you can go wherever you want. The guy stood up, shoved his hands in his pockets, and spread his legs wide. The redhead stared at the girl distrustfully. She had painted a tempting but vague picture. Here he had a roof over his head, food, and a generally good relationship with the foreman. But there? Diamond hesitated. Well, what's there to think about? Dina continued to insist. Natanich just set me up with you while it suited him. He's afraid he doesn't have enough people, so he's trying to strengthen your friendship. Listen, if we fly away, will you come with me? Have you fallen in love or something? That's all I need. Damn, I can't lie. The captive sighed and brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. Dim, don't be offended. You're a good guy. You'll find yourself a girl in the South. There are definitely more people surviving there. But I don't really see you as anything, only as a friend. The girl forced herself to say the last word with great difficulty. Not at all. I'm such a freak, aren't I? The red-haired man took a step forward. Dina realized he took the rejection hard. He should have lied, but it was too late. We need to calm him down, convince him somehow. But the captive didn't have time to think of anything. Dima quickly approached, grabbed her by the collar, and yanked her toward him. You will still be mine. Mine! The girl scratched the red-haired man on the neck and tried to break free, but he grabbed her wrists, then turned her around and began to strangle her. You seem to like it when they force you, huh? You like it when they handle you rough? Does that turn you on? Hariton's right. I need to break you first. Diamond huffed in her ear, trying to unbutton her pants with one hand.
No, no, stop, Dina begged, gritting her teeth. Tears were starting to choke her. Everything was repeating itself, just like that first time with Natanich. The redhead pressed down on the back of her head and pushed her face into the pillow. She almost stopped resisting. Finally, he pulled down her pants and began to excitedly unbuckle his belt. "Please, I don't want this," the girl moaned, almost crying. "If you want it, of course you do. With you, bitch, there's no other way. You only understand force. I offered it nicely." "Dima, Dimochka, it hurts. Don't do this. You're not like that." Such. Now you'll be working with me twice as often as with Carito." The redhead didn't finish. The captive felt the cold hilt under her pillow, spun around, and plunged the knife into her throat just below her chin. The rapist wheezed, his eyes wide with surprise, and tried to rise, but his body no longer obeyed him. "I asked you to stop." Demon wanted to reply, but instead of words, blood gurgled in his mouth, and he choked. The corpse fell off the bed, burying its face in the cold floor. For another minute, the captive remained motionless, frozen against the wall. Dina watched the dead man, trying to stop trembling. She was afraid the red-haired man would rise at any moment and attack her. Hariton should have been lying in his place. When they captured the bunker, Dina made up her mind. That same night, she wanted to free Ivan, but instead became a prisoner. Natanich hadn't trusted her with a weapon before the raid, only taking it for the sake of numbers. But the girl had hidden a penknife she'd stolen from the kitchen in her boot. When Demon locked her in yesterday, he didn't search her, and now he paid for it. Dina looked at his twisted corpse and remembered that fateful morning in the forest. "It's because of you that I'm here. It's because of you that I've been through all this hell. It's your own fault. You're no better than that bastard." The thought of Natanich filled the girl with fear again. He was next in line, but Dina was afraid to face him. Where could he be? In the lab? In the medical ward? Or sleeping in his room? Wait, why did Keraton give me to Red? Because he found someone else. He's with that blonde right now, Vanya's wife. Poor thing, I don't envy you. But just be patient, it'll all be over soon. The girl took the set of keys and the pistol from the dead man. She carefully opened the door and peered into the hallway. Empty. Now she had to move as quietly as a mouse. Dina remembered where the prisoners were kept, but she wasn't sure which cell Vorobyov was locked in. The lock clicked. A faint whisper came from the hallway. "Van, are you here?" A female silhouette glided into the room. Andre sat up in surprise. "What the hell? A setup? It's that girl!" Dina turned on the light and realized she'd made a mistake. Just in case, she kept one hand on the guy's gun and the other on her lips. "Shh. You're Vanya's friend, right? I'll help you." A couple of minutes later, Masha's friends opened the door to her room and saw Hariton huddled on the bed, clutching his groin. The rapist was moaning angrily, his eyes bloodshot with pain and rage. A second earlier, Vorobyeva had kneed Natanich in the balls and tried to grab his weapon, but he had delivered a powerful slap. The girl had been thrown into the corner of the room, awaiting retribution. The captive had taken a risk, but lost. She had been unable to overcome her composure and lie down under the foreman. Hariton turned his head, stunned with surprise, and immediately received 2 bullets to the stomach. Natanich let out a cry like a wounded boar and, despite his wound, rushed at the enemy. Thanks to his incredible health, he was able to take a few steps before a third bullet struck him in the chest.
The leader fell backwards, still breathing. He could only move his eyes, glaring with hatred at the enemies surrounding him. Ideally, I'd feed you alive to the zombies, but not everyone's such a scumbag.
Get some rest. Ivan shot the foreman between the eyes. Freedom! No one was holding them here anymore. The friends rejoiced, ignoring the bloody corpse in the middle of the room. They'd seen so many deaths before, and this only brought them joy. Andrei looked at Dina with gratitude. Listen, are you sure he's the only one left? Yes, I had to kill the red one, and Pooh went to the village for his wife and Regina. Pooh? The red-faced one? Kuznetsov asked. Yes, his wife and another woman remained in the house. She used to live with this bastard. Ivan, without letting go of Masha, reluctantly looked at Hariton. So she'll be happy we took him down too? All that's left is to deal with Pooh when he gets back. I don't think so. Regina loved him. She even tried to poison me as a rival. What a family! Why the hell wait for them? Let that Pooh live, to hell with him. He didn't kill any of ours. We need to fly right now, Andrei suggested. Okay, I'll check the car now and get to work filling it up. But I need one more person to help. Lev Nikolaevich looked at the guys. I'll do it, Kuznetsov volunteered. And you free up Borisich and Kurochkin in the meantime. We did manage to finish the vaccine after all. Masha pursed her lips sadly. If the professor is still alive. His head was cracked today. I bandaged it as best I could, but they wouldn't let me stay with him. Oh man, I didn't know that. Fine. We're leaving anyway, with him or without him. Let's get going. I don't want to hang around here even for a minute longer, Andrei urged everyone. Wait, what should we do with this doctor? Kurochkin. He's Vlasov's man, Vorobyov mused. Kuznetsov shrugged uncertainly and spread his arms. Well, he had no other choice. He's as fanatical as Khaimovich, all about science. We'll put him in the bunker. He'll definitely find work there. Yes, of course, scientists are worth their weight in gold now, Lev Nikolaevich agreed. Okay, then let's get to work. Ivan, Masha, and Dina went to the medical unit. The roar of gunfire brought Albert Borisovich back to consciousness, and he lay helplessly on the couch with his hands and feet bound. How are you? Vorobyova carefully touched the professor's forehead. Khaimovich felt a sharp dizziness and closed his eyes. Drink. Having quenched his thirst, the professor coughed and opened one eye. What's happened? We've won, and we'll be leaving here soon. Can you stand up? I'm not sure. Everything's floating. Cough. Cough. I feel like I'm falling somewhere, but there's no bottom. And my arms are so big and heavy that I can't lift them. While Masha was talking with Albert Borisovich, Ivan stepped aside and called Dina to him. I'll go get the doctor, and you keep an eye on this wounded guy. He's a sly devil. He might be faking it. If he starts acting up, shoot to kill. Okay, whatever you say. The girl was surprised, beginning to understand the strange relationship between her new allies. Vorobyov took the keys from her and headed toward Kurochkin's cell. The scientist looked at the unexpected guest with indifference. After the death of the hybrids, Robert Karisovich sank into such a deep depression that he lost interest in everything that was happening. If he'd had alcohol on hand, he would have drunk himself into oblivion, but he had to endure it all sober. Get up. You're free to go. Come fly south with us? There's work and a roof over your head for you there. Kurochkin heard the words, but couldn't make out their meaning. They flew past his ears like buzzing echoes. Hey, are you okay? We killed Khariton and his men. The bunker is clear.
We'll leave as soon as we refuel the helicopter. You're Ivan, right? The doctor gave the cosmonaut a strange, displeased look. Well, Robert's eyes became moist. They were innocent. Nature made them this way. I tried so hard. I wanted so much. Why did he do this to them? Vorobyov recalled the corpses of the hybrids he'd had to drag into the hangar, and then spend another hour scrubbing the blood from the cell. Kurochkin had wept for these little creatures as if they were his own children, but he hadn't said a word about Vlasov. He's definitely a fanatic. Good then. He doesn't care who's in power, as long as he doesn't get in the way of his work. Robert Kirisovich continued to lie there indifferently, as if nothing had happened. This was starting to bother the cosmonaut. He hadn't thought the doctor would turn into such an apathetic vegetable. Okay, come on, grab your feet and let's go. If you don't want to, then stay here. I don't care. But Khariton's men will be arriving soon, and you'll have to deal with them yourself. Why did you bring them? The first sparks of anger flashed behind the veil of indifference. Who? Khariton? To free his wife, his friends, and get the hell out of here? I'm sorry, I didn't know he'd cause such a massacre here. Ivan lied to both himself and the doctor. Vorobyov knew Natanich wouldn't pat anyone on the head. But the cosmonaut didn't care. He just wanted to survive and save his loved ones. Kurochkin fell silent, pursed his lips resentfully, and stood up. He walked out into the hallway and slowly wandered toward the lab. Vorobyov followed, estimating how long it would take the men to fill the car with gas. I should have gone with the president. I'm more tech-savvy than Andriuka. Although, in theory, it's automated. If everything works, it should be fine. But what if it doesn't? No, let's not dwell on the bad stuff. That's it. The rough patch is over. Everything will be all right from now on, the cosmonaut reassured himself. By the time Ivan returned to the room, Albert Borisovich had already managed to prop himself up on one elbow and was talking to Tanya. It was the first time Vorobyov had seen the girl's face so happy. Masha and Dina were chatting in the corner, even laughing. The thought of freedom was inspiring for everyone. They had to wait almost an hour for Andrei and Lev Nikolaevich. Ivan wanted to check on them several times, but he was afraid to leave Masha alone with Kurochkin. Of the remaining people, he trusted only Dina, even though he barely knew her. The doctor wandered the corridors of the shelter like a ghost. No one disturbed him. He peered into the hybrid chamber once more, stood there for a minute, and then turned back. This place had become his true home. He had practically become one with it, and now he had to leave it all behind and start over. Robert was still young, but now he felt like an old man. The signal rang, and the cosmonaut hurried to the hangar to open the gates for his friends. Kornilov and Kuznetsov returned, their faces red from the cold, but happy. Everything is working, ready for flight, the president reported, although it was usually he who was reporting. Ivan nodded approvingly and looked at Andrei. Great, now we need to move your professor. He's complaining that he can't stand on his feet. The friends returned to the medical bay. Finally, everyone was gathered in one place. Except for Kaimovich, they had to move the arsenal and some equipment from the lab. It was a shame to leave it all behind, and no one wanted to come back here again. They'd lived long enough. What should we do with the infected? Kurochkin asked quietly, while the others discussed what else they could capture. There was a pause. Everyone was in a joyful bustle and forgot that in addition to the hybrids, several more experimental zombies were huddled in a separate chamber. Vorobyov took the pistol off safety. Eliminate them, of course. What else can we do with them? Put them in the helicopter with us? No thanks. We'll catch you as many elands as you want. Then I'll do it myself. Those weren't just zombies. They were my colleagues.
Can I? Robert Kirisovich extended his empty hand. Okay then. The cosmonaut thought for a second and reluctantly handed over the weapon. But Andriuka will back you up. Otherwise your hand might shake. On the way to the chamber, Kuznetsov questioned his colleague in detail about the viruses preserved in the storage facility. Don't worry. The biological weapon poses no danger. According to current protocol, it's completely isolated from the environment. The storage facility will withstand even a bomb being dropped on the bunker. To access the viruses, you'll need access codes known only to Miron Mikhailovich and me, the doctor assured Andrei. So we can just put the HUD on a stick? Nothing will leak? That's impossible. There's a multi-layered security system here. Over time, the viruses will simply become ineffective. The infected were dealt with quickly. Kurochkin's hand didn't tremble. Although he was still lost in thought, lost somewhere in the clouds. Once they'd lugged everything they could into the helicopter, they decided to sit down in front of the airstrip. Albert Borisovich continued to lie on his cot, his condition worsening and then improving. Masha bandaged the professor and prepared a stretcher. Tanya now remained at her mentor's side. Everyone felt a slight shudder from the feeling that this whole hell was finally over. The friends glanced at Dina with curiosity. They essentially knew nothing about their unexpected savior, to whom they now owed their freedom, and perhaps even their lives. Well, that's it. Let's get out of here. Borobiov smiled, slapped his knees, and stood up. Suddenly, he felt déjà vu, so clear and distinct, as if he'd lived this moment 100 times. You can't imagine how I dreamed about this moment. Andrei's words were drowned out by the roar of a shot and a furious cry. Because of you! Because of you! Kurochkin fired 3 bullets into Ivan's back, then turned the gun on Kornilov. Just before the 4th shot, Kuznetsov managed to hit the doctor's hand, and the bullet missed the president's head by a few centimeters. Everything was jumbled together like a tornado. Howls, screams, cries, sounds of a furious struggle, groans and curses. Tanya shrieked and jumped in fear. Lev Nikolaevich's legs buckled, and he pressed himself against the wall to steady himself. Masha froze in stupor, as if frozen. Andrei tackled the doctor to the floor, and Dina knocked the pistol out of his hand. Kurochkin continued to curse Vorobyov and everyone else, blood dripping from his split lip. For what? You monster! For what? Andrei screamed at him, watching the pool of blood spread under his friend's body. It's all his fault. Oh, and you too. You ruined everything, Robert yelled, alternately bursting into laughter and then hysterical, cursing everyone with every ounce of obscenity. Masha was on the verge of fainting. She couldn't believe that all this was actually happening. Vanya, Vanyechka, no! The girl turned the body over and burst into tears. Her husband's dead, glassy eyes stared at the ceiling. The cosmonaut's heart stopped. They tried for a few more minutes. Even Haimovich crawled off his couch and tried to help. But it was all in vain. Death had clutched Ivan tightly with its bony fingers. Andrei, realizing it was all over, attacked Kurochkin again. After smashing his face, Kuznetsov took the gun from Dina, shoved it into the doctor's mouth, and fired.
Robert's brilliant but deranged brains splattered across the room. However, this revenge could no longer console anyone. Half an hour later, the helicopter's blades began to move. The Schmel awoke from its slumber, its engines hummed, and smoothly lifted off. The damned bunker soon disappeared from view. The next day, a snowmobile pulled up to the shelter. Pooh eyed the half-open gate suspiciously.
"That's strange."
"Wait here," Pavel Dmitrievich ordered the women, took his machine gun off his shoulder, and cautiously slipped inside. He quickly returned with a gloomy, pale face. "They killed Hariton and Rigi too. There's no one else here." Regina's cold, piercing eyes dimmed. Uliana Andreevna gasped and covered her mouth with her mittens. "I'll bury them in the snow. You can't break up the ground now anyway," Pooh sighed. "And us? What next? Where to? What to do?" the wife clucked. "We'll return to the village. I didn't like it here from the start. It's a godforsaken place. It smells of death here." Pavel Dmitrievich coughed and went to bury the dead. Chapter 54. Dugout. May heard the tramp long before he saw him. The kickboxer hid behind the wide trunk of an ash tree. Evergreen ivy, as thick as an arm, twined around the tree, perfectly camouflaging the man. The stranger was walking straight toward him. Though he tried to move carefully, he was in a hurry, making quite a bit of noise. May drew back the bowstring, aiming the arrow at his neck. It was too far away. It was easy to miss from here, and impossible to miss. Still just a kid, the boy thought, letting his prey get closer. But a kid with a machine gun. I wonder where he got it. Come on, come a little closer. Oh, so you have a pistol too. It's a lucky day today. At that moment, the stranger seemed to sense danger and froze. He looked around in confusion, trying to decide where to go, and finally changed direction. "You bastard! Now I'll have to chase you down, stalk you," Limanov said, looking at his victim with annoyance. He was ready to kill anyone for the sake of his machine gun. With a weapon like that, they could fight off any mutant. Nothing personal, just survival. The kickboxer waited until the teenager disappeared behind the trees and followed him unnoticed. The hunter slowly closed the distance. He couldn't give himself away, or he'd be in big trouble. His bow versus his machine gun. A duel Mayu wasn't at all comfortable with. He soon managed to sneak up closer and take a comfortable position. The stranger stood with his back to Limanov and looked around, unaware that he had only seconds to live. Mai drew his bowstring and held his breath. The hunter timed the interval between heartbeats. He only had one shot. The teenager stood there, completely exposed. The stranger turned halfway, and now Limanov could see his face. His hair was shaved almost to the scalp. There was a bruise on his forehead, and his gaze was sullen, but not cowardly. The kickboxer saw something familiar in him. About 10 years ago, he had a friend named Arturchik who looked a bit like this kid. They had been close friends back then, until Artur was hit by a stoned addict at a crosswalk. "Stop being stupid! Do you need the gun or not? Shoot!" Mai fumed at himself. Before, he would have shot this poor guy without a second thought. His fingers, clutching the arrow, were already trembling with tension. No, he couldn't miss from here. Meanwhile, Max took a sip from his flask and sighed heavily. He'd been searching for his sister for 2 days now. Last night, he'd stumbled upon the dentist's abandoned car, but then lost the trail. The teenager had barely slept last night, and now felt broken, weak inside and out. He'd lost Lena twice before,
But then his friends had been with him in the mental hospital. They'd helped him quickly find and punish those bastards. Now, Sova was completely alone, and everything depended on him. With each passing hour, despair was growing stronger. He was lost, wandering at random, and his chances of finding his sister alive were melting away like butter in the sun. "Stop! Put your hands up! If you turn around, I'll take your head off. Hands off, I said!" May barked, suddenly appearing from his ambush. Sova couldn't see his opponent, but he sensed a steely edge to his voice.
It clearly wasn't Valentine. He had a completely different timbre. "Put your machine gun and pistol on the ground, now!" He had to obey. Just a moment ago, Max had thought things couldn't have been worse. It turned out they were. The teenager dropped his weapon and raised his hands. "Should I turn around? I want to see the one who will kill me." The owl began to slowly turn around without permission. He no longer cared. If Lena was dead, then they would meet soon. So it was fate. The teenager grinned sadly as his opponent in an airsoft helmet threatened to blow his head off with a homemade bow.
"They conned me like a sucker. It's my own fault. So what now? Maybe I'll manage to get away?"
May read his thoughts and quickly closed the distance. Now there were less than 10 steps between them. "Well, have you looked? Face down. If you move, I'll shoot you right away." The teenager buried his nose in the dry leaves. The fact that the stranger didn't kill him right away gave him a small glimmer of hope. The kickboxer tucked the pistol into his belt, picked up the machine gun, checked that it was loaded, and pressed the barrel to the prisoner's right shoulder blade. "Now tell me, who are you? Where are you from? What are you doing here? If I think you're lying, I'll make another hole in you. It will hurt a lot, but you won't die. Not until I want you to." There was no point in lying. It wouldn't have worked out to be a hero anyway.
"My name is Maxim. I'm looking for my sister. She was kidnapped by a bald man with a black beard. His name is Valentine, I think." The owl knew everything the dentist had said was probably a lie, including his name. Perhaps the archer was in league with him, and now the doctor would emerge from the bushes, laugh, and together they would begin to slowly kill him. "Are you alone with your sister?" Max hesitated, wondering how to keep from giving away the others. Then Mai, with a kick to the kidneys, reminded him that it was better to tell the truth. "No, we live in a village."
"Where is he? How many people are there?"
"It's 2 or 3 days' walk from here. We're not that new. Probably about 20 people."
The prisoner lied slightly. "And do they all have machine guns?"
"Yes, there is everything in order with weapons there."
"Let him be afraid, the bastard. If he's alone, he won't even venture into the Far East." Limonov bit his lip nervously. Captured guns were all well and good, but they only came with 1 magazine of ammunition. That wouldn't last long. Mai wondered if they'd ransom this kid, and, more importantly, if he'd be able to return to Nirvana alive with that ransom. The owl guessed his wishes. "Listen, help me, and you'll get a machine gun, a pistol, silencers, and as much ammunition as you can carry. If you help me find Lenka, I'll be in your debt for life. I'll give you everything I have. You're like Robin Hood. You can't run through the forest with just a bow for very long."
"The bow is silent."
"But a machine gun is better when a crowd of zombies is rushing at you or a mutant is jumping out of a tree." Limonov took a step back. "A mutant? Have you seen one of those too?"
"Yes, recently." a nimble creature, but we quickly brought him down, shot him to pieces. But I don't think this is the last one. Mai remembered how they fought back in the house with improvised means, weighed the pros and cons, and made a decision. Okay, get up. Tell me, who is that bearded guy? Sova rose carefully, avoiding any sudden movements under fire. Now he could get a closer look at the stranger. But Mai was in no hurry to remove his helmet, so the teenager remembered only his eyes, stern, cold, and distrustful. Max told the whole story, from the kidnapping to this morning, how he'd wandered along the highway all day, then turned onto a dirt road that led him into the forest.
There he'd found his car stuck in a puddle, and was already relieved to have almost caught up with the kidnapper. But then his luck ran out. Limonov listened silently, without interrupting. Anyway, the road ended and then the trail disappeared. I spent the night under a tree and continued on at dawn, and then I met you. How old is your sister? 14, 2 years younger than me. May looked away thoughtfully. Some ideas popped into his head. I think I know which dirt road you're talking about. I need to check out this house over there. I found it recently. It's old, a wreck. There are even mushrooms growing on the roof. Where can I find him? Owl blurted out, his strength and hope immediately returning to him. Let's go back to that road first, then I can show you. Walk ahead and don't be stupid or you'll quickly get shot. He doesn't trust me, so he's not stupid. It doesn't look like a trap either. What's the point of going anywhere with me if you can just shoot me here? He must be telling the truth. Max's temples began to pound in anticipation of a quick reckoning with the kidnapper. How long will it take to walk approximately? It's fast, 3 or 4 hours, but we need to be careful, not too fast. If that guy's armed, we can't make any noise. And if he's with his buddies... Sova recalled the first time he saw Valentine, how quickly he'd bonded with the others in the village, how they'd tried to persuade him to stay. No one had seen him as a maniac or a psychopath back then. How could he fool everyone? Why did he take Lena? What did he do to her? Max's mind was about to explode with rage as he began to dwell on these thoughts. The closer they got to the road, the less they talked. Finding a dirt road proved difficult, but things got easier from there. The guys stopped near an abandoned car. May looked up at the sky, calculated their route by the sun, and pointed southeast. By evening, the travelers reached the ill-fated house. The leaky door creaked eerily on its rusty hinges at the slightest breath of wind. Occasionally it would crack open, and then Max would peer eagerly from his hiding place into the dark opening. Not a candlelight, not a puff of smoke from the chimney. Nothing. Do you have a flashlight? Limonov asked. Yeah. Go around in an arc, look out the window. I'll cover you from here, keeping my sights on the door. I won't give you the gun back, I'm sorry. Max was happy with this plan. He'd been exhausted enough watching that shack, and Mai had forbidden him from breaking into the dugout right away. And now, finally, he could act. The teenager crept up to the little house, practically crawling. There was only one window, very low. Sova peered inside and at first saw nothing. The evening streetlight barely penetrated the dugout. But then his eyes adjusted and Max made out a silhouette. His heart pounded as if a huge drum were being pounded in his chest. It's her! It's definitely her! Lena! Forgetting caution, he rushed to the door, burst into the house, and froze. The girl's body lay motionless on the dirty mattress. His brother realized he was too late. He was afraid to approach, afraid to see if it was true. Max didn't believe it. With a trembling hand, he pointed the flashlight beam at her face and screamed. Footsteps were heard from the street. Limonov stopped at the threshold and realized it was best not to bother the boy now. Everything was clear without words. Finally, Owl found the strength to approach his sister. From a distance, she looked asleep. But as he got closer, Max discerned deathly pale skin, purple marks around her neck, and dried blood at the corners of her mouth. The dentist had claimed another tooth for his trophy collection. The teenager fell to the floor and burst into tears. He hadn't felt such pain since the day his parents died. Now Lena was gone too. He was left alone, completely alone. Max felt so bad he wanted to die, to lie down next to her and never get up. But a few minutes later, another thought flashed through his mind. Owl realized he couldn't die while this creature walked the earth. The thirst for revenge gave him strength. Max rose to his knees, kissed Lena's forehead, and made the sign of the cross. I will find him. I swear I will. Chapter 55. After. Winter-spring arrived late this year. Nature, longing for the hot rays of the sun, responded instantly to the warmer weather. Buds swelled, birds began chirping in every key, everything came alive. Everything, that is, except those who could no longer be brought back. Masha, Tanya, and Maxim stood by the graves where young grass was just beginning to sprout. Lyoka watched the forest from a distance, covering his friends. Now, no one ventured beyond the village perimeter without 2 armed soldiers. Almost half a year has passed, Masha sighed quietly. When they returned to Dalny, the widow nearly committed suicide. Tanya saved her in that difficult moment. Thanks to the girl, Vorobyova once again felt needed in this world. The little girl became so attached to Masha that she now considered her a second mother. The wooden crosses had darkened over the winter. The girls planted lilies of the valley on the graves and placed pieces of still warm bread. 6 months, you say? Max responded. For me, too, it all seems like yesterday. Recently, I dreamed again about the house where I found Lenka. She stood there crying, and I tried to tell her something, but she wouldn't listen. I constantly dream of Lena in tears. I think the dead care. They're right there with us. I know she'll keep crying until I get my revenge. After his sister's death, Sova became close friends with May, Kir, and Lipa. They helped deliver Lena's body to the village and settled in Dalny from then on. Now Max had only one goal in mind: finding the killer. Limonov and Toropov offered their help, and a search and reconnaissance team was formed in the village. The 3 of them combed the entire area, making useful connections with the coastal gangs. But no one heard anything about Valentin. The maniac seemed to have vanished. In the spring, the scouts mapped out a route to Abkhazia. The dentist once let it slip that he was considering settling in this warm southern town. He could have been lying, of course, but it was worth checking. Lipa immediately volunteered to accompany the boys as a guide. She knew Abkhazia inside and out. Max feared problems on the Sukhumi highway and planned to travel by sea. He was counting on Sukhoi's help with this. The captain promised to sail with them even to Australia after Andrei brought the vaccine aboard. Kuznetsov himself, along with Katya, spent most of his time in the bunker's lab. Andrei was responsible for producing the antivirus and tried to keep Malishkina out of it. After the vaccination, several people moved to the village, but many chose to remain in the safety of the underground. Now that people could surface and wander the surrounding area, life in the bunker no longer seemed so dreary and hopeless. At least in the shelter, they didn't have to fear a hybrid invasion or toil like they had in the Far East. Andrei and Katya's relationship changed dramatically. They had experienced so much suffering and loss that they now cherished every moment together. The lovers stopped bickering over trivial matters as they had before and simply enjoyed their quiet happiness. When Lisitsina recovered from her wound, she promised to name her first son Horace in memory of her savior. While Kuznetsov was producing the vaccine, Lev Nikolaevich was distributing it throughout the region. The president established a strong alliance with Novorossiya, but did not claim his former status as head of state, instead settling for his new role as an ambassador of peace. The antiviral was working. The pandemic had ended. Children were being born healthy, and the survivors looked to the future with hope. Dalny slowly but surely grew and developed. However, not everyone found a place there. The captive Galina and Lidka were sent to Novorossiysk at the first opportunity. No one in the village wanted to live side by side with the Gordievka women any longer. Internal enemies no longer appeared in Dalny, and they had learned to more or less deal with external ones as well. To protect against mutants, the village was surrounded by a high, solid fence, topped with electrified barbed wire. Now Dalny looked a bit like a prison, but the hybrid incursions had ceased. The farm grew, and Fyodor and Boris began breeding horses. But after Gorik's death, the need for a veterinarian became urgent. Dina, who had always enjoyed working with animals, decided to pursue this profession. She quickly integrated into the village life, as if she'd been born there. There was plenty of work for everyone. People were constantly learning something, some to shoot, others to heal, still others to build. If you want to live, you have to be able to move around. And only one person in Dalny lost interest in life. Albert Borisovich never fully recovered from his head injury. He settled into the smallest house on the outskirts, changed greatly, rarely went outside, and spent almost all his time alone. The professor grew a long beard and visibly aged over those months. Frequently plagued by dizziness, Kaimovich walked with the help of a cane to avoid falling during one of his sudden attacks. Masha and Andrei didn't reveal his identity. After all, the professor had helped create the vaccine, at least atoning for his guilt by 0.1%. According to the official version, he died at Khariton's hand, and the last surviving scientist from the Ural bunker arrived with them. Albert Borisovich was relieved of all duties due to health reasons, and it seemed his existence was completely ignored. Only Tanya and Masha visited Kaimovich, bringing him groceries and occasionally brightening the evenings with conversations over tea. Meanwhile, at the cemetery, Vorobyova placed her hand over her lips and then ran her fingers over her husband's grave cross. It was her little ritual, a farewell kiss before another parting. Masha looked at Max, guessing what he was thinking. "Are you going today?" "Yeah, the guys are already waiting. As soon as I get back, we'll go right away." "For how long?" "For 3 days, at least. The roads are getting worse and worse. Soon we'll be riding horses and be nothing but marauding cowboys." "Just yesterday a foal was born." Dina delivered a foal for the first time. Leica approached his friends, not forgetting to look at the treetops. "Do you like her?" Masha asked unexpectedly. "Dina? Well, she's so interesting." The guy hesitated slightly. "Then don't waste time. Get married, or Max will steal you away," the widow advised. The owl exchanged glances with his friend and again looked sadly at his sister's grave. "No, Lyoka, I'm definitely not your competition when it comes to Dinka. You should be careful with Kira. But Masha's right. Don't hesitate." "Okay, time to go back. Dad is waiting." The friends walked toward the village and soon went their separate ways. Lyoka went to help his father, and Max went on another foray with May and Balu. Tanya, I'm free for now. Do you want to visit Albert Borisovich? Masha suggested. Let's go, the girl responded happily. When they opened the gate, they realized the professor was in trouble. There was a large hole in the kitchen window, and a stool lay lying in front of the house. Kaimovich himself was breathing heavily, hunched over on the floor.
He's having another seizure.
Vorobyova rushed to the medicine cabinet, shoved a pill into the professor's shaking mouth, and forced him to swallow. About 10 minutes later, Kaimovich came to his senses, looked at the broken frame, and clasped his head in his hands. I saw dead people. I was absolutely sure I saw one trying to climb in through the window. I threw a stool at him, and then it hurt. Oh, how it hurt. How much longer must I endure this? The girl looked at Albert Borisovich with concern. He looked completely unwell today. Quiet, you can't worry. I'll ask Lyoka to put the glass back in. We'll fix everything. Masha tried to calm him down. The professor ignored her words. He knew it wasn't the window that needed fixing, but something inside his head. But no one could help him with this problem. The scientist stared at Tanya, mumbled his wrinkled lips, and stroked the girl's head. Do you study? Do you read? Yes, Aunt Marina has a geography lesson today. Ksyusha and I are studying. Kaimovich was delighted and nodded. Learn. Knowledge is power. I can't teach you anything anymore. I've forgotten everything myself. Albert Borisovich began to wail like an old woman and suddenly burst into tears. His psyche was completely shattered. Vorobyova winced at the smell of rotten porridge and began washing the dishes. Have you eaten today? No appetite. I'll cook some noodles now. I definitely need to eat. The professor pressed his palm to his aching head again. The echoes of the attack continued to haunt him. Tanya looked at her mentor with pity. She remembered him as a completely different person. Strong, courageous, intelligent, energetic. And now, sitting before her, was a miserable, nearly senile, grumbling old man with a shaking head. Having become attached to Masha, the girl distanced herself from her mentor. Albert Borisovich wasn't offended. He was happy for Tanya as if she were his own daughter. The little girl found new friends, was cared for by good people, and finally found a new, normal family. Soon Vorobyova put a plate of pasta on the table. Eat, we have to go. We'll come back this evening, after 8. When the guests left, Kaimovich lazily chewed some noodles and suddenly froze, his mouth open. He seemed to have remembered something very important, but immediately forgotten it. The thought was irretrievably lost in the murky depths of his memory. The professor dropped his fork, stood up, walked over to the sofa, and collapsed onto his side. He tried to sleep, but failed. Idleness oppressed Kaimovich, and he couldn't work. The scientist looked longingly at the door and considered taking a walk, but changed his mind a second later. Something stabbed painfully under his ribs, and his temples began to buzz again. Albert Borisovich felt helpless, useless, and damned. He had once dreamed of becoming the messiah of a new world, but he had become a dead weight, moribund. By evening, the professor's condition worsened again. A silhouette flickered outside the window, then another. But it wasn't Tanya and Masha returning. A shudder ran through the scientist. Someone in a dark robe stopped in front of the broken frame and pulled back his hood. You? You again? Go away, you're not here. You're not here, Albert Borisovich muttered in panic. He recognized Berkut's face, disfigured by ulcers. The ghost flew through the window and stopped. His eyes still burned with anger, just like the last time they met. Suddenly, Tanya's parents emerged from the second room.
Decapitated, their pajamas splattered with blood, they carried their heads in their hands. More and more corpses surrounded the terrified Khaimovich. Arnold Samuilovich and his wife sat at the table, as if at home. The owners of the roadside inn looked at the professor with disapproval, thirsting for revenge for their ruined lives. Kurochkin appeared in the corner by the dresser.
The doctor muttered something about hybrids and scratched himself constantly, peeling off chunks of his skin. Inspector Venya, his worm-eaten face, appeared next to Berkut. Khaimovich pressed himself into the sofa, then jumped to the floor, began smashing everything around him and flailing his arms. He fought the ghosts, but he couldn't defeat them. They surrounded him, inexorably tightening their grip, and drained the professor of his last strength. Albert Borisovich clutched his throat, breathing hoarsely and rapidly, as if someone had cut off his oxygen supply. He realized he had lost and slumped in defeat. Only one small task remained to be completed. The scientist crawled to the kitchen, opened a drawer, and pulled out a knife. Khaimovich looked around, chose a suitable wall, and scratched the first line into it with the blade. He carved each new line with ferocity and pain, as if he were slicing through his own flesh. Having accomplished his plan, the professor set about the final task. He pulled a rope from under the sofa and slung it over the beam. His hands were shaking, and he couldn't tie the noose. Albert Borisovich felt as if the ghosts were hurrying him, urging him on, demanding he finish it quickly. "Stop staring at me! Go to hell! I know what needs to be done. I know." Khaimovich stared around like a hunted animal. He didn't just see ghosts. He heard their footsteps, the rustling of their clothes, and even smelled the rotting stench of corpses. Finally, Albert Borisovich climbed onto a chair and closed his eyes. Suddenly, he heard Dodge's cheerful barking outside the window. The dog whined impatiently like a puppy, calling for his master to play, just like old times. "You little devil! How I've missed you! Come on, you slobbering mug!" Khaimovich laughed and stepped toward his only true friend. He stepped off the chair into empty space. Masha and Tanya arrived, as promised, just after 8. The light in the professor's house was out. She knocked, but the door was open. "That's weird. He usually locks himself in the evening," Vorobyova said in surprise, squealing at the same time as Tanya. Masha covered the girl's eyes with her hand and quickly led her outside. "Don't look there. You don't have to. Let's run and call for help." A couple of minutes later, the entire village had gathered in Khaimovich's room. Lyoka cut the rope, and the professor's body fell to the floor. "I forgot to come by this afternoon. You mentioned the glass, but I got so busy I forgot," the guy muttered apologetically. But no one listened to him. Everyone was looking at Albert Borisovich's suicide note. Scratched on the wall in large, clumsy letters was a single word: 4 guinea. Chapter 56. Vasilievka. New tires crunched briskly on the gravel. Yesterday, Boris and Lyoka had installed fresh tires on all the work vehicles. There was plenty of that around. Over the winter, the scouts had removed enough tires to fill an entire fleet. But even seasoned off-road vehicles couldn't navigate every road anymore. Spring streams had washed away the asphalt in places and warped the surface so badly that they sometimes had to stop, grab shovels, and somehow repair the road. Today, on our way to the sea, we encountered 3 zombies. A rare sight these days. Over the winter, most of the infected died of starvation, and the most agile, strong, and lucky ones turned into hybrids. These creatures, however, weren't just wandering around in broad daylight, preferring to lie low in shelters and come out to hunt later at night. Two electric jeeps rolled onto the rocky shore, scaring away the seagulls. Mai and Kier climbed out and looked around. Everything seemed calm, but that meant nothing. As RoboCop liked to say, if a mutant doesn't want to, you won't see one. Without wasting any time, Limanov gave a signal. The ship responded, and 20 minutes later, a boat docked. Max recognized Sukhoi from afar, accompanied by his constant assistant, Vasyan. The captain, wearing an old, tattered Cousteau cap, jumped to the ground with a groan. "Well done, Landwolves! Tell me, what's new?" "They brought you a new ram and some other food," May grinned, extending his sinewy hand. "Well, we dried some fish for you and salted it fresh. Grab some on the way back. Where are we going today?" "To Novorossiysk." The president carefully pulled a backpack containing the vaccine from the back seat. They were to deliver 300 vials to the Allies. The surviving settlements slowly but surely expanded. Thanks in large part to the mutants, even stubborn hermits united with other people. Survival among the intelligent hybrids became very difficult for small groups. So people retreated to the fortified, well-guarded remains of the cities. Novorossiysk and Gelendzhik became exemplary growth points in this regard. A master's hand was felt here. A heavy, at times very harsh, but generally fair hand of Lieutenant Captain Nikolai Fyodorovich Golovin. The president quickly found common ground with him. Kornilov made no claim to the former power and immediately recognized the independence of Novorossiya. Besides Novorossiysk itself, this new state included the entire coastline from Anapa to the village of Betta, plus a dozen inland villages. But the scale seemed deceptive. Where 10,000 people had once lived, now only 10 remained. The boat took on passengers, revved its engine, and soon was briskly slapping its bottom against the sea. Sukhoi and his crew weren't yet interested in joining forces. The hybrids weren't a threat to them on the ship. The captain had established trade with Dalny and the Sochi authorities, befriended the Novorossiya authorities, and, in short, was useful to everyone and a hindrance to no one. Clouds appeared on the horizon. Sukhoi looked gloomily at the sky. They had just passed the famous Parus Rock when a powerful headwind blew in. "Will we make it in time?" Kornilov asked worriedly. "There's a chance," the captain promised vaguely. When the storm reached the coast in full force, the travelers had already taken shelter in the port and were leisurely sipping hot tea. Outside, rain lashed down and waves crashed against the pier, but the massive concrete structure easily repelled their impacts. Lieutenant Commander Nikolai Fyodorovich Golovin greeted them as warmly as ever. The master of Novorossiya was short, lean, with an aquiline nose and a calm, thoughtful gaze. His inner strength seemed far greater than his outward appearance. He knew how to inspire confidence in his men. Golovin possessed an iron will and an unyielding character. The poet Nikolai Tikhonov wrote of sailors like him, "Nails should be made out of these people. There would be no stronger nails in the world." "What's wrong with your roads? Still not resolved?" asked Kornilov, dipping a pretzel into strong tea. "Not yet. Jubga is fighting Arkhipka for control of the junction. We're not interfering. We're maintaining neutrality. We'll negotiate with the winner later." Sukhoi scratched his gray sideburns and lit his pipe. "Should we take it ourselves?" "Why do we need extra casualties? We can take them, but we can't hold them for long. I need people here. We have enough other problems. For example, a week ago in Vasilyevka we came across some mutants, a female with a cub." "With a baby?" Max and Kier blurted out at the same time. The president choked, and the others froze in surprise. Golovin understood their shock. The female was shot. The cub was taken to a farm and is being fed cow's milk. Andrei warned that they could reproduce, Sova recalled, but only in theory. Well, that's some practice for you. Toropov scratched the stub of his ear. It began to itch as if on command when the conversation turned to mutants. Lev Nikolaevich pondered this problem deeply. If hybrids began to reproduce rapidly, the next generation of humans could be their last. Give the cub to us. Let Andrei study it. We'll see if we can control it over time, Kornilov suggested. I thought so myself. Take it, Nikolai Fyodorovich agreed. When the weather improves, we'll go to Vasilyevka for the animal. The male is giving them no peace now. He's already killed one guy, and the hunters can't catch him. Neither traps nor poisoned bait are helping. Max looked out the window. The rain was pouring down the glass in a continuous stream. He's taking revenge, and it's understandable. They are people, after all, though they seem like they're from another planet. Andreyuka asked us to catch a male and a female, wanted to continue the experiments, but we've rarely seen any females. A baby would be a real gift for him. It's just that the females are more cautious. They're cunning beasts, Limonov added. At that moment, there was a knock on the door, and a soaking wet Nazar Romanovich stumbled into the room. As usual, he was accompanied by the beautiful Margarita. We almost made it before the rain, the mayor of Gelendzhik complained, extending his hand to everyone. Noticing Max, he winked at the teenager. Of the 4 boys, only Sova had been a regular visitor to Novorossiya since that first meeting. In keeping with all the rules of hospitality, Golovin ordered the bathhouse to be heated for the guests. In such weather, a steam bath was a particular pleasure. The wind was dying down. The sun had long since disappeared behind the sea. The journey home lay ahead tomorrow, weather permitting. However, the Allies could linger here as long as they liked. Any news from your intelligence officers? Lev Nikolaevich asked the mayor. I know they've reached Volgograd. They're moving slowly, looking into every corner where someone's breathing. They're sending everyone here or to Krasnodar. But as far as I know, the vaccine there is already running out. Nazar Romanovich closed his eyes and rubbed them tiredly. A month ago, the mayor dispatched 5 experienced soldiers from Gelendzhik on an information mission. They were tasked with telling everyone they met about the vaccination centers. There was no distinction between good and bad. It was all about preserving the human species. Well, God willing, we'll take the next big batch to Krasnodar. They'll distribute it around the area themselves. Kornilov and his team had managed to set up several immunization centers in Kuban, Adygea, and Crimea over the winter. He had no plans to stop there. The harbor dogs began howling outside. The aging moon peeked out from behind a cloud, only to disappear beneath a thick layer of clouds. Such encounters were rare, so the men talked until late into the night. But even when everyone else had begun to snore, Max couldn't fall asleep. A strange, unsettling feeling troubled him. He only drifted off toward morning and saw Lena again in a dream. His sister, as always, was crying. Limonov had a hard time waking his friend up for breakfast. Wake up, lazy bones. How much longer can you squeeze the pillow? Huh? What? Max grabbed his head with his hands, unable to open his eyes. Are you going to get the baby, or will you wait here? For whom? The cub? Everything's mixed up in my head. I'm going, of course. An hour later, their group, along with Nazar Romanovich and 2 security vehicles, set off for Vasilyevka. The president noted with respect that Golovin was trying to keep the roads in decent condition. Several times, they encountered small teams of men patching potholes. They reached the village without incident. When the locals brought the hybrid calf in a baby car seat, Lev Nikolaevich's heart sank. The baby was just like any other baby, only hairy from his feet to his face. He looked around, looking for his mother, but there was no mother. His mother had been killed. Soon he would forget her completely. Now, unfamiliar faces stared at him, pointed, and muttered incomprehensible words. Recently, one night, the cub caught the faint scent of his father and burst into tears. But the male couldn't steal him. The fur isn't as thick as that of adult hybrids, but the claws are already sharp and strong, Kornilov noted. And the jaws will be powerful, you can tell right away, Baloo nodded. He doesn't have any teeth yet, but he sucks like a calf, eats enough for 3, the plump woman explained, carefully handing over the precious burden. Max noticed a slight sadness in her eyes. She had obviously become attached to the baby. We have plenty of milk. We have goat's milk, cow's milk, and even mare's milk, so don't worry. You still need diapers. You'll be tired of changing nappies. We'll get it. Lev Nikolaevich was puzzled by the unexpected problem. We named him Vaska, since he was born near Vasilyevka. Don't change his name. It's a bad omen, the ant warned. Having taken charge of the little mutant, the president didn't linger long. But on the way back, there was a hitch. A nail punctured the tire of the lead car. The detachment stopped near a work crew. They were lazily patching up another pothole with cold asphalt. 2 of them immediately lit up a cigarette, watching the driver change a tire, and the third didn't even glance toward the convoy. But it was this third man who caught Max's attention. The worker was slowly compacting mortar into the hole. Sova could only see his back, his dirty work pants, and his faded cap. At that moment, something pushed the teenager forward. Max took a few steps closer, and the stranger seemed to sense it and glanced over his shoulder. What happened next was so fast no one understood. The worker dashed toward the forest, and Owl gave chase. The other men watched their run in amazement for the first few seconds. But it didn't last long. The fugitive tripped and fell on his stomach. He managed to get up, only to receive a sharp blow to the nose. The worker was broader in the shoulders and larger in build, but Sova charged with such fury that he knocked his opponent off his feet. Max recognized him by his eyes, by the cowardly, frightened look. Valentin had shaved his beard and lost weight, but it only took the teenager a second to recognize who stood before him. The men arrived just as Sova pointed a gun at the maniac. He was afraid the dentist would somehow escape from him again. "Maxim, stop!" Lev Nikolaevich shouted warningly. "What kind of lawlessness is this?" one of the workers yelled. Limanov immediately understood everything and pointed his machine gun at the road workers. "Don't move. We're taking your colleague away. We've been looking for this bastard for a long time." Ignoring the others, Max kicked the dentist in the chin. His jaw cracked, several teeth flew out of his bloodied mouth, and Valentin fell flat on his back, unconscious. "What's going on? Who is this?" the breathless mayor of Gelendzhik muttered. "The maniac we were talking about. He kidnapped and killed a girl, and shot another guy," Kornilov explained briefly. Yes, I remember you talking about that tragedy. We questioned everyone who came to us, and not a single one matched that description." Nazar Romanovich began his report, confused, as if he were in a meeting. "Have you known him for a long time?" Baloo barked at the workers. The foreman looked sullenly from under his brows. "What about Arkasha? He's been in Vasilyevka for 3 days. They immediately assigned him to us to fix the road, in place of Grishka, who was mauled by the mutant." "Arkasha, you say?" Lev Nikolaevich approached the dentist closer, who was still lying unconscious. Well, that's what he called himself, the second worker confirmed.
It's all clear. We tie him up and throw him in the car. We'll go to trial. Nazar Romanovich waved his hand. Judge him! Why judge him? Max had dreamed of this moment so often that he'd even fallen into a stupor when it happened. The mayor's words brought him out of his stupor. I had a dream recently, and it turned out to be prophetic. I dreamed I found that bastard and got revenge, and when I woke up and realized it wasn't real, I felt so bad. Anyway, do you have a couple of tow ropes in the trunk? Of course, we don't travel without them, nodded Nazar Romanovich, not fully understanding what the teenager was getting at. Valentin, Arkady, Eduard, Vikenty, Yermolai, Sevostian. The maniac liked to choose memorable names and often change them, covering his tracks. The dentist spent the winter in Abkhazia, but was nearly killed there. Seeing this as another sign, he headed along the coast, first to Crimea and then to the Balkans. Valentin Arkady sought refuge in small villages, avoiding settlements by the sea. He never stayed anywhere for long. The dentist planned to leave Vasilyevka the other day, as if he sensed impending danger. But this time, his luck ran out. Max explained how he wanted to execute the maniac. Kornilov merely shrugged dismissively. It's up to you. Nazar Romanovich hadn't welcomed lynching, but now he turned a blind eye. They owed these guys too much to interfere in such a personal matter. In any case, the dentist faced death. Although firing squad and even the gallows seemed the height of humanism compared to what Sova proposed. The maniac was dragged out onto the road and brought back to his senses. He was shaking so violently, it was as if a dentist were holding high-voltage wires. Ropes were tied to Valentin Arkady's legs, and the other ends were secured to the tow bars of the cars. Mai took the wheel first, while Kir took the place of the second executioner. The pickup slowly drove off in opposite directions, the ropes tightening and slowly beginning to tear the killer apart. Lev Nikolaevich stared at his feet, and the mayor turned away completely, not wanting to have nightmares later. But Max stared fixedly at his enemy's pain-contorted face. Joints dislocated, muscles tore, ligaments cracked, the cars accelerated slightly, and it all ended with a terrifying scream. The maniac's entrails spilled out onto the asphalt, where he had been serenely walking just half an hour earlier, unaware that the unfinished pothole would soon fill with his blood. Until the last moment, the dentist felt excruciating pain and screamed so loudly that it seemed all the souls of the murdered girls in heaven must have heard him. A couple of hours later, the boat departed Novorossiysk. Vaska, the little hybrid, burst into tears, frightened by the whistling wind and the roar of the engine. However, he didn't cry as loudly as a human infant. Rather, he whined and grumbled. Nature had ensured that newborn mutants didn't attract unnecessary attention. Lev Nikolaevich shoved a bottle of milk with a nipple into his mouth, and the little hybrid soon calmed down. Max barely remembered the way home. He hadn't been disturbed again. That night he'd fallen asleep quickly and deeply, and in the morning he saw his sister. For the first time in a long time, Lena wasn't crying. The girl was playing the flute, still in the same dugout. The melody seemed familiar, but Owl couldn't remember where he'd heard it before. Their eyes met. His sister smiled gently, turned into a dove, and flew out the window. Chapter 57. Separate Roads. Summer had returned. A warm southern evening enveloped the village. Music played softly, and people were enjoying themselves at tables in the open air. In Dalny, Leka and Dina's wedding was taking place. Everyone was looking forward to this celebration, to take a break from their troubles and feel like life was returning to its former peaceful course.
The newlyweds stepped out for the first dance, and Dina rested her head on her husband's shoulder, enjoying his tender embrace. Setting out on foot through the taiga on that cold autumn day, she never dreamed the road would lead her here. The horrors of the past were behind her, and now she had a new family. Meanwhile, at the table, Andrei whispered something to Katya, nodding toward the newlyweds. Lysitsyna laughed softly and stroked her rounded belly. They were expecting a baby in 3 months. The first child of the new era had recently been born in the bunker. Milana, General Gornilov's daughter, named her son Vladimir after her grandfather. The music ended, and the newlyweds shared a long kiss, accompanied by demanding cries of "Bitter!" Then Peter, acting as DJ, changed the repertoire, and the rest of the crowd went dancing. Fyodor nudged the president's shoulder. "Your little brat will probably be the next groom. Ksyuka is blossoming, a beauty." "It's still early. Let them decide for themselves in 3 years. They've become fast friends." The Cossack grunted contentedly, stretching his mustache into a smile. "And when will you? You're not old yet." "We'll see." Lev Nikolaevich avoided answering. He still hadn't brought himself to get back together with Marina. Something held Kornilov back from that step. Perhaps it was grief over his dead wife and daughter, or perhaps something else. However, it was too late to dwell on that. Zhenya Kalmykov proved far more agile than the president in matters of the heart, and after moving to the village, the engineer soon moved in with Marina. The celebration went on as usual, but beneath the outward gaiety lurked a sense of constant readiness for trouble. The row of machine guns and rifles along the porch became a familiar sight.
Andrei caught himself thinking that the only place he could truly relax now was in the underground shelter. Although he and Katya didn't like being stuck in the bunker for more than a month either, so, having prepared a supply of vaccines, they would come to the village for a week-long visit. Kuznetsov felt something slippery touch his leg under the table and looked down.
"Ah, so that's who's poking their nose into me. Here, take it." The scientist patted Agat on the ears and shared a rib of lamb. Few believed the dog would survive the fight with the hybrid on the farm. The shepherd lost an eye and suffered several terrible wounds, but pulled through. RoboCop joked that he and Agat now had a special squad of one-eyed dogs. The dog limped badly on his front paw, but continued to serve. However, the number of dogs in Dalny increased, and Boris spent his free time training new guards. "Can I have some more compote?" Tanya, out of breath from dancing, held out her empty glass. Masha scooped up some water from a large saucepan with a ladle. "Hold it!" Vorobyova had never seen the girl so cheerful as she was that evening. Over the winter, Tanya had grown noticeably, stretching and gaining strength. Everyone quickly fell in love with her honesty, curiosity, hard work, and modesty. Like Dina, the little girl had found a new home in Dalny and never wanted to leave. Romashkina drained her glass in one gulp and ran back to the dance floor, which was the soft green lawn in front of the house. Masha watched her with a solicitous gaze, wanting a little break from the noise. The girl went into the backyard, where a small orchard grew. Vorobyova lay down on a stack of freshly cut grass under a young apple tree. The music was barely audible here, but the melody of nature was loud. The chirping of grasshoppers, the rustling of leaves, and the echoes of frogs trilling in the ditch. Masha looked at the sky. A few bright stars peeked through the branches. The sight of these small, cold lights often made her sad. Sometimes she imagined her husband's face in the constellations. The longing for him, like an unhealing wound in her soul, echoed daily with a sharp pain in her chest. I heard soft footsteps behind me, as if someone was sneaking up.
There you are, and I lost you. Do you mind? Max asked quietly.
No, of course not. Sit down. Vorobyova moved slightly, giving part of the haystack to her friend. The teenager fell silent, pondering how to continue the conversation. Masha closed her eyes and simply enjoyed the peace. Outside the house, the chorus of "bitter" began again. Vanya and I would have been celebrating our wedding anniversary soon. Just imagine, only a year has passed, but there are enough events to last a lifetime. Max said nothing, merely snoring thoughtfully. A lizard rustled in the grass, and a few seconds later, the poor grasshopper disappeared into its mouth. A little further away, a cat sharpened her claws on the bark and ran off to seek adventure on her furry backside. Spring made the wheel of life turn faster. I'd like to check out. Masha discerned an unusual sadness in her friend's words. Where to now? No, not on a reconnaissance mission. I'm leaving for good, for a long time. I don't know if I'll ever come back. How? Where? With whom? Vorobyova turned, looking at her friend's serious face in surprise. Sukhoi suggested we go around the world with him. He found a suitable yacht, spent the whole winter getting it ready, and was ready. Only Vasyan supported him. He'll transport the rest of the crew from the ship to Gelendzhik. We've already made arrangements. The two of us, Mai, Kir, Lipa, and I, are leaving in a week. Sukhoi didn't want to take Lipa at first. Well, she's a woman on the ship and all that. But Mai wouldn't go anywhere without her. Do the others know? You first. I'll tell the others tomorrow. I don't want to cause a fuss at the party. I'm speechless, Maxime.
It'll be so sad without you.
Owl sighed heavily. It wasn't easy for him to leave his friends either. I thought about it, but I feel like it's not my thing. I dreamed of us all going somewhere together. Lenka and I talked about it while we were waiting for you to get back. Now she's gone, and so is Vanya. Andruka's been spending all his time in the lab. Katya's pregnant. What kind of trips around the world are they going to have? You seem to be... Tanya... Adopted? Masha finished for him. Yeah. Sukhoi definitely won't take the child. This isn't a walk around the bay. It's a dangerous undertaking. The widow recalled her last moments with her husband. He died instantly, without a chance to say goodbye or even exchange a single word. There in the bunker, Masha was pierced by such pain, as if those bullets had hit her. Now she would feel them for the rest of her life. Bullets cannot be removed from the soul. You know, there are things scarier than zombies. Yeah, I know. Hybrids. Owl glanced around just in case. You'll remember him, and it'll come up. No, it's even scarier. What are you talking about now? Loneliness. You can run from zombies, mutants, and other enemies, hide, you can kill them. But loneliness, it's always there. What I'm getting at is, with Tanya, I don't feel completely alone. Now only she needs me. Or rather, in the end, neither of us needs anyone. But together, we're better. I support her, and she supports me. And you're also lonely without Lena. That's why you try to run away, to swim away somewhere. Max pondered these words for several minutes. He both agreed with them and mentally argued with them. Maybe you're right. I'm not a psychologist. I don't know how to delve into feelings. I made a decision, and now, whatever happens, happens. Masha smiled and ruffled his hair. It's grown over again. Let me at least give it a trim before it floats away.
So, what's your plan?
The owl brushed the mosquito off his nose and bit a piece of straw. We'll stop in Sevastopol first. Lev Nikolaevich wanted to take the vaccine there anyway. It's on our way, so we'll give them the antiviral. Then we'll head to the Mediterranean. We'll skirt the coast of Europe from the south and head northeast to Kaliningrad. And from there, across the ocean to Canada, the United States, and Mexico. We'll winter in South America, and next year it'll be Africa, India, Asia, and Australia. We'll be back here in about 3 years, not sooner, if we ever get back. Aren't you scared? It's scary, of course, but such a chance may never come again. Sukhoi dreamed of circumnavigating the globe his whole life, but he couldn't save up. Now he has everything he needs. Masha imagined, one after another, golden tropical beaches and huge stormy waves in the middle of the ocean, cozy European towns and bloodthirsty pirates, clear blue seas and toothy sharks. She wouldn't have gone on such a journey voluntarily, but she knew Max was completely different. You can die here or there at any moment, the teenager continued to reason. But when I think about what we can see, where we can go, it takes my breath away. I'm both happy for you and afraid. You're a true friend, Maxim. I'll wait for you. We all will. Okay, see you tomorrow. I'll go relieve Maya and Lipa on duty. Now it's their turn to have fun and make toasts. The girl watched him go. Owl quickly, without looking back, disappeared around the corner of the house. Soon, he too would disappear from her life. Another loved one would be gone. Their paths would diverge for a time, perhaps forever. Masha turned to the stars, feeling so small and weak in this vast world. Memories flooded back, and a thin trickle of tears ran down her cheek. Vanya, Vanyachka, my darling, I know you're there, flying through your beloved space. Someday we'll meet in one of those worlds you told me about. The girl blew a kiss into the sky, and a white streak flashed across the black sky. Masha realized it wasn't just a fallen star, it was his response.